We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Strong by Design podcast. This is your host, Coach Chris Wilson, who actually was the host of the two-part episode, very special episode with our guest, Shaun Hadsall, talking about his experience with the 75 Hard program. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back and listen to that. But you're here on part 2, so there's a good chance that you already listened to the first half of this conversation with Shaun, and you're just itching to hear what more he has to share about his experience with carb cycling, with the importance of protein, with the importance of strength training over cardio training. And so there's so much more good information and great nuggets in here. So get ready for part 2 of 75 Hard and Carb Cycling with Mr. Shaun Hadsall. Now, some people, when you talk about carb cycling, some people maybe are more familiar with it as like a carb refeed, right? Would you kind of say that those are in the kind of the same terminologies, or
it is similar? I think it's funny because when I explain how I do carb cycling, a lot of people will say, "Oh, okay, so keto during the week, and then refeeds at the weekend." No, not even close.
Yes.
Okay, so the #1 most underrated, underutilized, undereaten macronutrient is protein.
Right.
It is the king of all macros, especially while dieting. Superior for the reasons that I'll cover right now.
Yes.
And you should eat protein in every single meal because protein is the only macro that will speed up your metabolism through DIT, through diet-induced thermogenesis. And in fact, your body will burn almost 3 times more calories digesting protein than it does digesting fats or carbohydrates. So it's the only macro that will keep your metabolism elevated on a diet. And the first thing that happens when you cut calories and go on a diet is within 5 to 7 days, you get metabolic slowdown. And the main reason that happens is because you're suppressing thyroid and leptin levels. And I'll talk more about how to reset those. So during the week, what you want to do is, if you're very active like we are, you want to take your ideal body weight and have at least 1 gram per pound of body weight, okay, per day. So for me, that was a lot. It was even more than that. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So the second reason outside of DIT is that protein is the most satiating nutrient of all nutrients. What's going to feed you up, a basket of bread or beef?
That's right.
Beef.
It's hard. If you put a 12-ounce piece of meat in front of somebody and say, okay, eat that before you eat anything else, there's a good chance that they're full once that piece of meat's, maybe they can pick on a few vegetables or potato or something, but that's it.
So with that being said, too, that's why protein powder is really a good tool to use.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to eat that much meat every day, right?
It's almost impossible.
I did 2 or 3 shakes a day just to hit my macros, right? So the other reason that protein is so powerful, because it's the only macro proven to prevent muscle loss on a diet. And that's the first thing that happens when you diet. Is
lean muscle tissue.
Muscle is metabolism. I mean, anybody who is afraid of not having enough muscle has been misled, okay? Muscle equals metabolism. The more muscle on your body, the more calories you're burning while you're sitting at your desk, sleeping, and watching TV. It's really that simple. And in fact, if you look at we could take 2 250-pound guys and put them next to each other, but you give one guy an extra 30 pounds of muscle, he's going to look half as fat as the other guy because his fat is spread out over a larger space. So having more muscle mass spreads out your fat more, so you look less fat.
And that's something.
Most people don't think of it that way. And if you're a pear or an apple-shaped body and all you do is cardio and eat right, and you lose that muscle, you're just going to be a smaller pear or apple.
That's right.
And you're going to end up getting metabolic slowdown that could be permanent, like the Biggest Loser contestants. They tested them a year after the contest, and I think it was the season 7. They were burning up to 700 calories less a day, and their leptin was almost at 0 because of the crash dieting. Right? So never underestimate the power of protein. And then lastly, protein before bed has been shown to increase muscle protein synthesis at night. night, which is muscle growth. And then people who do that wake up with more stabilized blood sugar. So a variety of reasons why protein is by far king of the macros. I had 250 grams or more per day. I started the contest at 194. I ended at 196. So I didn't lose a ton of weight. I just got ripped. But
interesting.
I was eating 250 grams a day.
Your weight actually was up 2 pounds?
No, I went from 194 to 186.
186. So you only dropped 8 pounds, but 10% body fat.
Exactly.
Almost.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think I might have even gained a little bit of muscle this time around, which is never done. And a lot of that had to do with because I wasn't doing so much cardio. Because that's the other thing. If you do too much cardio, you'll burn up your muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that simple. It's not nearly as much cardio required as you would believe. And, I proved it this time around. Typically at this body fat level, I weigh around 182. And right now I'm 186. So I'm 4 pounds heavier at the same body fat that I was 2 years ago at 50 years old. So it goes to show you the power of protein, and you just don't need as much cardio as you think you do.
No, I think the walking is key. And walking is something that, we should be able to do from obviously when we're very little until we're very old. And I almost feel like the happiest elderly couple I ever saw was one that's hand in hand walking outside.
It's so anti-inflammatory, unlike running.
It does everything for you. You're outside. You're taking in vitamin D from the sun. Yeah. You're breathing fresh air. You're moving all your limbs. It has so much benefit, and it's so I say undervalued or just. I go for walks all the time, my wife and I, with our dog and our kids and all that stuff. And I just want other people to feel the same interest in it.
I think as I get older, I enjoy it more and more, too. I've learned to enjoy walking. And a lot of people don't know that there's been a lot of research showing endurance athletes actually have low testosterone. And because it's very inflammatory. And, too much cardio, and I've done marketing hooks on this and products on this philosophy, is too much cardio increases cortisol, free radicals, suppresses thyroid hormones, increases hunger and cravings. So not saying don't do cardio, but just be consciously aware that you don't need it every day.
Not
and you don't need a ton of it.
Right.
And you should probably, if you are jogging every day, it'd be wise to replace 3 of those days with just walking, like you said.
Right. Or even throw in some sprints or something. It doesn't have to be.
I walked and sprinted on the beach today. Yeah. I loved it that way. I'd count to 30 on a hard run, and then I'd walk for a couple minutes, count to 30 on a hard run, walk for a couple minutes, and then, you get your metabolic rate elevated a little higher after that and burn more calories. Yeah. But, when the reality is, it all comes down to, 80% of this is diet.
Yeah.
It really is.
It really is. So we've talked about what you've done. We've touched on the exercising, but specifically, what kind of resistance training, strength training were you doing? Were you doing a combination of like calisthenics with weights, machines? What did that look like?
Before we go there, let's talk a little bit about the macro ranges.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I want people listening to understand how to carb cycle themselves if they want to.
Yeah.
And it can be done several different ways. But my favorite way is Monday through Friday deplete. Okay, so super high protein and carb grams for a man who is an exerciser should be about 75 to 100 per day, and that should be done in the pre and post workout window, divided into 2 doses. Okay, if you're not active, you would want to keep that under 50 grams a day. Now, for a female, it's going to be about 50.
This is Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, and then if you're a female, 50 to 75 grams of carbs if you're an exerciser, and 25 grams to 30 grams a day if you're a non-exerciser. Now, these are impact carb grams. So take the total number of carb grams, subtract the fiber, and that's your impact carbs. That's the amount of carbs that are going to impact blood sugar and insulin.
That's right.
The high protein diet, like I said, take your ideal body weight, 1 gram per pound of body weight. Fats will fill in the gaps. Okay, fats will be 50 to 60 grams on the weekdays. Now, on the weekends, this is when we're going to intentionally keep protein a little lower. You don't have to worry as much about protein. You're going to up your carbs, and fats are going to stay around the same. And so what you're going to want to do is, I had about 200 to 250 grams of carbs on Saturday and Sunday. These are clean glucose-based carbs. And it's important to note this because the 5 days is like this big fat loss phase where your body becomes fat adapted. You keep your body in a deficit. And then you're really, you're not going into a huge surplus on the weekends. You're still can be in a mild deficit or maybe a little bit at maintenance, maybe even a little bit of a surplus. But what happens is during that 5 days, because you've used up that glucose in the workouts, you're very depleted. So the liver tissue and the muscle tissue stores glycogen from carbs, and it's very depleted from those 5 days, especially when you exercise. So now all those carbs are going to refill that glycogen inside your muscle and liver tissue on the weekends, and you're going to want to keep those fats a little bit lower, because when you raise glucose, it's super important because those glucose molecules are the building blocks of thyroid and leptin hormones. And so those hormones have been suppressed those 5 days. So you're in a fat loss phase, but the metabolism starts slowing down because of the hormonal decline. Well, the glucose from rice, potato varieties, oats, quinoa, certain fruits like bananas, stuff like that, that glucose is going to help rebuild those thyroid and leptin hormones. Plus, it's going to boost your metabolism back up that's from slowing down from those other 5 days. Plus, you're going to have sanity.
Right?
Because you get to eat your carbs.
That's what I'm saying. It's just a more enjoyable meal, right? You look forward to it. You know, like, Saturday, dude, I can eat this, that, and the other today.
If you're dieting and you don't really want to get anal, just do a fist-sized portion of carbs 3 times on Saturday and Sunday. Balance it out with a leaner protein cut if you can, because you want to keep the fats lower, right? And then fats will fill in the gap a little bit there too as well. And then during the week, you can have fattier cuts of meat, because you want to have more satiating foods, because carbs and starches are lower. Because keep in mind now, starches from glucose, although they're necessary because they're building blocks for hormones and they can reset or reboot your metabolism a little bit, they also can raise insulin very high, right, and fast. Higher and faster than other foods. Well, when insulin's elevated, it's a storage hormone. So if too much fat is present in the diet at the same time, insulin's going to take that fat and it could potentially store it. So it's in your best interest to keep fats moderate. Now, with all this being said, if you're a keto person, you're a keto person. Fine. It might work for you. I personally can't stand that diet as an exerciser. I think it's very therapeutic, but without the glucose, I feel terrible. And Richie was talking about this, the guy who did 75 hard lost. Now, Richie was beating himself up, but he lost 35 pounds of fat. And I'm like, Richie, a pound of fat is like that big.
I know.
Why are you beating yourself up? Dude, you lost 35 of those, man. That's a lot of fat.
That's a lot of fat.
He did intermittent keto. And so he was intermittent fasting with keto, and he hated it. I hate it. I feel like crap. I can barely get through my workouts. I'm like, well, then why are you doing it? You don't have to do something you hate.
But was he? Now you can't. If you're doing 75 hard and you select the diet,
I don't think you could switch. I didn't even ask.
I was going to say I don't think you can.
I mean, we were like a week away from being done at this point. So I just said, dude,
just grind, bro.
Yeah, as soon as you're done, if you want to talk more, we can talk more about something a little different for you if you want. You know what I mean? So again, it goes back to the best diet you can stick to is one you can adhere to. And then I just shared obviously all the benefits of the carb cycling methodology. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And we can move to exercise if you want.
Our team would like to thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. And if you're enjoying today's show, please share this episode with at least one friend or family member who will benefit from this message. And please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
It sounds like your caloric intake was probably a slightly higher on the weekends then because of the increased carbs, but it had to be fairly high during the week with that. If you're eating 2 to 250 grams, 250 grams of protein, I mean, that's right there, right? That's 1,000 calories just from protein.
Well, what you do is, I think the best way to do calorie-wise is just take your ideal weight. So say you're 225 pounds and your ideal weight's 200. Take 10 times that. Have 2,000 calories a day, okay? Now, with me having a lot of muscle and being on the leaner side, my target macro during the week, because I weighed 194 pounds, that's take 10 times that, it's almost 2,000 calories. So I stayed right between 1,800 and 2,000 during the week. And then Mondays and Tuesdays, I'd intentionally sometimes go down to 1,700 because I had the higher calorie days on the weekends. So the highest I hit on the weekends was about 2,200.
Okay.
So it wasn't that much.
No, it wasn't a huge range.
Just enough to spike the hormones, get the metabolism cranking, take away the hunger and cravings, get the carbs in my diet, and then right back at it again on Monday. And I also recommend an intermittent fast on Monday after the weekend. After the higher calorie days, it's great. Your body's primed. The hormones are primed.
Right.
Glycogen's replenished. So now your body's in a perfect position to do intermittent fasting if you choose to do so. It's not necessary to do intermittent fasting. I mean, they've done side-by-side studies. At the end of the day, you could eat all your calories in 1 2-hour window, or you could eat it in a 12-hour window. If all macronutrients are equal, so will weight loss be equal, right? It does not matter. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of other benefits to intermittent fasting outside of just weight loss.
Correct.
Right. So we won't even go down that rabbit hole.
More gut related and digestion.
Autophagy, all that stuff, right? Yeah, growth hormone.
So obviously we talked about the group. We've talked about accountability people. Like others, you guys are texting. You're in the same thread. Every day probably there's messaging going on. I'm struggling today, or today was a big win. Look what I did, or check out this picture, right? I mean, share in that, in what that probably really helped people, kind of the momentum of the whole process.
I think it was huge. You got to, I mean, some of the guys, I remember the one guy, his wife and kids got T-boned in a car accident, and he had to fly out 2 hours later.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? So he's texting us all, pray for me, and we're all like raising him up and lifting him up in prayer and texting him back, right? And he's heading to the hospital. He's got to make sure they're okay. Once he confirms they're okay, he's off to the airport. Well, he still hadn't got his second workout in. He had to do his second workout in the airport.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, I think I know who that was.
Danny Chavez.
Yeah. I think I heard about that story.
Yeah. So anyway, it was all kinds of stories like this coming in. I mean, for me personally, mine was my injury. About 2 or 3 days after the injury, you know, I had what I call plum disease. Poor little old me.
I like it. Plum. It doesn't sound like something you want, right? I have plum. Oh, no. Is it contagious?
I think it can be. And so it was like, oh, poor little old me. And then, you know, the group really lifted me up. I told everybody, you know, I probably would have bailed these last couple of days if it wasn't for you guys. I'm out here stretching and pouting because I can't do any cardio, and now my momentum's ruined, right? And we talk a lot about big momentum kicking in. And them guys, like, it carries you through. So, you know, if you're out there and you're like trying to figure out a way, find an accountability partner, create a deadline together, dangle the carrot and create a reward. You know, it could be a vacation, it could be an anniversary, it could be, you know, a wedding, you know, anything like that you guys can get together with a group or another person and create a reward and a consequence.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the consequences of me quitting, where I lost that trip, I disappointed somebody that I look up to. And then, of course, I lost. The rest of the group beat me. So I had a variety of reasons how effective an accountability group can be. And again, too, you know, a lot of these guys are my friends, too. I even recommend finding somebody that's just not a friend to do it with, because somebody that really is going to call your ass out. You know what I mean? I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, because they don't have the same, the bias. You know, like a friend's going to give you that leeway.
A
like
spouse
you said,
is going to give you the leeway.
That's okay.
Yeah.
A spouse will, in most cases, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you had a bad day, honey. It's okay.
Exactly.
No, it's not, honey, actually, because for 75 days, I'm really supposed to adhere to this, you know. But if I feel like the accountability and the group mentality and the connection to others is really what helped people through adversity, which you know is going to happen.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to have one thing that really sucks that happens to them in 2.5 months.
Totally.
Right? At some point. And so when you have those other people there,
right,
that's huge, man. You know, other people are praying for you, thinking about you, hitting you up with a message, calling you, emailing you, whatever. Like, it's like, wow, that's huge for me. That helped me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if it wasn't for the group, I wouldn't have been able to finish. And I've been doing this for 20 years.
I was going to say, you're like the expert in transformation. I mean, think about it. This goes back 20 years. You were a Body for Life champ. You know what I mean? Like, you know what to do, you know, but
same psychology applies to me as it does to everybody else.
That's
correct. And I think too, talking about like the power of planning, like those days where it was 10 p.m. at night, those were few and far between for me, because if you, and it's so cliche, the whole, like, if you plan to, or you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
But literally, just seriously, just take this to heart. If you do this every morning and you wake up and your water bottle is sitting there full, your clothes for the gym are laid out, okay? You're packed for your first workout. Your book is sitting there, right? And you can knock out a workout and read your 10 pages and suck down 40, 50 ounces of water in the first couple hours of your day, right? It's your frog.
That's your frog, bro. You're flying now.
Yeah, you just ate it, and now it's just like, bam, almost half that list is checked off. Now, here's the difference. If you wake up in the morning and you don't do that, I promise you it's going to cost you an hour. It's going to cost you an hour, whether you realize it or not. You're going to try to, because what is happening is you have to wake up and make decisions. And willpower is like a battery on your cell phone. Every decision that you make, it depletes.
Yeah.
Right? And so so if you wake up and everything's packed and planned ahead of time, you just eliminated about 5 or 6 decisions that you would have to wake up and make. And so when you make those decisions, not only have you chewed through time, you've chewed through mental energy and willpower as well. And so this is one thing that I've learned. And I've tested this over and over again. I'll wake up not doing that, and I'll be pissed at myself every single time because I know that just cost me at least 30, if not an hour, because of the mental.
That's right.
The mental energy that I just used.
Yep.
And so most people think that willpower is a muscle, and it's not. Willpower is a battery, and it declines with every decision you make throughout the day. And motivation is really just a myth. There's no such thing as consistent motivation. I mean, how many times have you worked out when you're not motivated to work out? A lot. A lot.
Many times.
A lot. I mean, people often will ask me, like, oh, man, how do you stay so motivated? I'm like, I don't. Just do it. Right? Just do it. It's
a decision, and it's discipline. That's all it is. It's not that I'm motivated. It's just I know I have to do it.
Well, and when you make it a habit in your life, the habit turns into a ritual. Right? And so one thing that you have to realize, too, about this whole planning ahead thing is that, and Tim Grover did a good job of this in his book, Winning. You can't manage time. A second's a second. A minute's a minute, an hour's an hour, a day's a day, a month's a month, a year's a year. You can't slow it down or speed it up or manage it. Time is time. You can only manage focus. And so by planning ahead and doing this every day, no matter what your goals are, doing that, you're managing your focus. And that's ultimately going to carry over into either you having a productive day or not.
And doing the planning and the legwork before you go to bed is huge. You're just setting yourself up for success. Like you said, fill the bottle up before you go to bed, pack the bag, arrange get the food like sorted and labeled and, portioned out, and all that stuff is done. It just makes things work like clockwork the next day. It reduces stress, which helps reduce cortisol. And everything works in your favor. And then mentally, you're just sharper. You feel like you're owning the day, and you're only a few hours in. But like you said, you've already had such so many wins already, and the day is young. You're like, man, the rest of the day is freaking just gravy from here. So that's what's awesome. So what do you, I think we've figured out at this point, because we've kind of talked through this in different ways. What are some of those things, those changes now that you've adopted that are that you really see yourself holding on to for the foreseeable future? Well,
for sure is the less alcohol intake. Just don't even have the desire or the need to drink. And I'm on vacation right now, and even my wife's like, man, you're changed. Like, she's like, and she's very, like, she loves it. Like, at first, when I first stopped, she's like, oh, I miss my drinking buddy. And I felt for her, because I felt, we had our 15th wedding anniversary, and, she had a glass of wine, and I couldn't have one with her.
Yeah.
But because she is a supportive wife, and because a disciplined man is attractive to a girl, right? That disappointment of her not having her drinking buddy turned into pride for her husband.
Yeah, that's right.
She could, over and over again, she kept telling me how proud of me she was. And so it makes me, when it ends, it makes me want to be more of that man.
Right.
And so now just one cheat day a week now, and learning not to snack. Okay, so no snacking principle. This is a great one to end with. And we'll talk maybe even a little strength training before we close it out here.
Yeah, of course.
So for me, the one cheat day a week is like a carrot. When you save that bite of pizza, cheesecake, or the cookie, or whatever it is you want, burger, fries, whatever, pasta, when you say no to that during the week, it makes every bite taste better when you reward yourself with it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because it becomes a reward instead of an escape. And I think it's looking at alcohol the same way. Now that I've been through this journey, when I started doing that little bit of booze every day, I started thinking to myself, man, am I an alcoholic? So I had to prove to myself I wasn't. And now when I go to have a cocktail, am I doing this as a reward or am I doing this as an escape? And I think that's really the difference between something that can become a reward versus an addiction, is looking at it like a reward and dangling in the carrot. So definitely, because of 75 Hard, I'm back to just one cheat day a week now, and I'm not going to go crazy or binge or stuff on that day. I'm going to enjoy the foods that I deprive myself throughout the week and treat that as a reward. I'm going to indulge in cocktails when I want to, but I'm going to always have that decision in my head. Am I drinking this right now because it's a well-deserved drink, or am I doing it to escape? And then the other thing is the water. Like in between drinks yesterday, my wife was cracking up because I was guzzling 16 ounces of water between every drink. Yeah. Only because of 75 Hard. The habits are carrying
just
over.
Used to it, man. Yeah, it's like chewing gum,
right?
It's like,
And then, of course, strength training. And I mean, I think we went to go down the exercise rabbit hole, and I talked about, the macros instead, because I wanted people to have that to take away from here and understand how to use. But strength training is by far, I think it's like protein. It's the most underrated, underutilized aspect of health.
Yeah.
When you're done training with weights, your metabolism takes 48 to 72 hours before it even slows down if you're intense weight training. Right? When you're done jogging, 60 minutes later, metabolism
you're fine, totally recovered.
Back to baseline, normal, right? Again, muscle equals metabolism, and I talked about the pear and the apple. So weight training with a lot of walking, and then definitely 2 or 3 days of the week, some type of high-intensity interval training. And I know that we talked about, I don't know if we have time to go into the 3 steps on how to burn a fat cell. But I can cover it real quickly with you.
Do the fat cells for dummies.
So again, it goes back to that tube of toothpaste.
Yeah.
If you just keep your body in a calorie deficit, and you can diet your way to an ideal weight. But again, when you want to get rid of that stubborn fat, it's going to require more of a strategy, because that's exactly what it is. It's stubborn. It's like that end of the toothpaste, right?
That's right.
And so most people don't understand the science behind how to actually oxidize and burn off a fat cell. And you really don't burn fat cells. This is like
they just flatten out.
They shrink, yeah. And so, it's a myth that you actually burn a fat cell and get rid of it. You don't. The only way you're going to do that is liposuction.
Right.
So there's 3 steps to burning a fat cell: release, deliver, and burn. Okay. Now, scientifically, the first thing you do is the release is mobilize. The deliver is transport, and the burn is oxidize. Okay. And that's the scientific terms for those. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing that you have to do to release a fatty acid from an actual fat cell is you have to have insulin very, very low. So being in a fasted state is when insulin is very, very low. And when you're in that fasted state, the sympathetic nervous system starts kicking up. This is your body's fight or flight response, and that'll cause the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and hormones called catecholamines. And it'll stimulate the pituitary to release more growth hormone. Okay, these catecholamines are responsible for releasing these fatty acids from a fat cell into the bloodstream. Okay, so how do you release catecholamines? You fast, and then in that fasted state, if you're healthy and you don't have any sugar issues or anything like that, you do high intensity interval training in a fasted state, and that stimulates that fight or flight response because you're fasted. You're already in a position where insulin's low, and you're doing that. And then, so you add this high-intensity intervals to it, that kicks up your fight or flight response even higher, and that's what coaxes those adrenal glands to release these hormones. Blood flow plays a very important part in this. So you want to then deliver those fatty acids, because now they're floating around in your bloodstream, to an active tissue where they can be burned off. So once you do the high-intensity interval training, you want to go ahead and follow it up with some type of cardio, because these fatty acids that are floating around in your bloodstream, they can actually restore into another fat cell. And most people don't understand this, especially, again, this happens when you're leaner and you have stubborn fat.
Yeah.
This is called re-esterification. And women, it can actually go from upper to lower and lower to upper and restore. And so this is
from one problem area to another.
And
right?
this is the way the stubborn fat science works. And so then that walking will burn it off. Now, another really good thing is people talk about how spot reduction doesn't work and it's impossible. Well, it's not necessarily true. If you look at some research, fat burning is higher in adjacent pockets of fat that have blood flow. And blood flow is very low in stubborn pockets of fat. So if you're a woman and you got fat on the hips, stimulate your hips. Work your hips and get blood flowing into your hips after you do the intervals. Get the blood flowing in that area first. If you're a guy and you got the stubborn lower belly fat,
sure.
After you do the intervals, crush 100 abs, do an ab circuit, get blood rushing into the catecholamines will then be delivered to that blood spot where that blood flow is at. And then walk to burn off those fatty acids that are released from at that point.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So that's how you burn a stubborn fat cell. You release it, you transport it or deliver it to working tissue, and then it gets burned off as energy by heart, liver, and muscle tissue.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a less than 5 minute overview.
I could have dove way deep down the rabbit hole, but we want to dumb it down and keep it easy.
No,
right?
it's fantastic. Well, and that's what's people will remember that a little bit better. Mike and I are always doing analogies with each other for just about anything we're trying to, point we're trying to make. And some of them are good and some of them aren't so good, but people will really, like the tube of toothpaste, people will remember that. It sticks. Yeah. So the simple stuff, the layman's language, is what people will remember. They don't remember all the science necessarily, but they understand the basics. The basics, and that's what's important there.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. To help our show reach more listeners just like you, please let us know how we've changed your life by leaving a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
You're at expert level with this information, so it's not as often that we get somebody that can talk through, other than like a Will Grauzione or some of these people who really have this
technical base.
Yeah. And, are reading research reports and studies and love that. Tanya, actually, she geeks out on that stuff all the time. It's great. Yeah. I love it.
Well, people can go to my YouTube channel, too, and if they want to dive deeper down the science rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I do keep it as simple as I can, and I think that's why people enjoy my material, is because I'll take science and then make it easy.
Right.
So.
Well, you'll do whiteboard stuff all the time, and that's where that's like classroom learning, but it's very, reasonable. You're not trying to bury people under the information. It's like, no, it can be this simple, actually. This is kind of what's happening in your body.
Simple, not easy.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's like most things in life are simple, not easy. So speaking of your YouTube channel, I know you have so much out there.
Beyond 40.
Past programs, but where should they go?
Just go to beyond40.com. That's pretty much our e-com site where my nutritional supplements are. You can read about Karen and I's story there and see the team that we have built. Really big on the YouTube stuff right now. Kind of let that channel die for a couple of years because we were busy scaling Facebook. And so now we're back on YouTube full force, and that's our main channel right now. We do spread across. If you look up Beyond 40, you'll see us across all channels, but YouTube's really the hub.
Yeah, that's great. And Instagram, do you have?
Yeah, Beyond 40.
Okay, Beyond 40 everything.
Yeah, and Instagram, not very active at all.
Yeah.
My team handles all that stuff, so where I'm the most active is the YouTube.
Is the YouTube. Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Can't thank you enough. I mean, I know this is vacation time for you. You got your bright orange tank. You Ubered here. You're going to just go back to the beach probably today at some point.
I'm going to go sit by the pool right now. I'm definitely going to have some cocktails because it's going to be a reward.
It's a reward.
And not an escape.
And then you leave for your big trip
tomorrow.
Is tomorrow. Unbelievable.
Hopping on the plane and heading out to Cabo tomorrow for 4 days, and gonna hoop it up there. We got a private chef, and we'll be living the 75 hard dream out there.
Man, that's gonna be great.
Yeah. So just trying to hang on to these abs while I still have them.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna have them for at least a few more weeks. You know what I mean? As you loosen the, loosen things up a little bit. But again, it does sound like so many of these things that you've been doing for the last 3 months. There's going to be a nice effect on these are rituals now.
Yeah.
That are in a ritual that, just to define before we go here, a habit can be good, it can be bad. It's not locked in. It's not like one of those subconscious things really until it becomes like a ritual, like you said. You know, it's just a habit. Now, sometimes in life, sometimes we have these bad habits that take away and move us further away from where we're trying to go. And then sometimes we just try and replace that one bad with one good, and then, repeat that now. And once it's a repeatable thing that's just ingrained in who you are, now it's a ritual. Now it's probably something that you couldn't even stop doing if you wanted to. You
need momentum. That's what you need with the big mo to kick in so it becomes a ritual. It takes about, in my opinion, with 75 hard, first week was the hardest with not drinking. But after 10 days, I could feel Big Mo kicking in, momentum. I get that from Darren Hardy, I think, The Compound Effect, that book, and Big Mo. I talk about Big Mo. So I always talk about Big Mo, and you can get Big Mo working in your favor. And I think, ending the podcast just talking about thoughts, because toxic thinking is toxic life. And so, they've now know that the brain is plastic and it can be molded based on your thoughts. And so whenever somebody says, oh, it's genetic or I have bad genes, that's all BS. And they know that now. Neuroscience and epigenetics proves now that our thoughts literally create our genes, and we have good genes and bad genes, and we can turn the good genes on or with our thoughts, or we can turn them off with our thoughts, and same with the bad, right? And so literally they've proven now through research that toxic thinking literally makes people sick. And
stinking thinking.
Whether you believe something or not, you're right. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So I think, ending the podcast just saying, hey, I'm 50, right? I just gave myself a checkup from the neck up at 50 years old. I never, ever want to stop learning and growing and becoming a better version of me, right? And the second that I think that I know it all or I've mastered it is the second I'm going to die, in my opinion, because you're either growing or regressing every single day, but it all starts with your thoughts. So during your morning time, whatever you decide to do, if you're going to take to heart what I talked about planning ahead, put some gratitude in there. And I would just end this with that. The very act of being grateful releases endorphins in the brain that increase happiness, they increase fulfillment, they increase purpose and passion and all those things. And so I think we take for granted and we don't even realize that thousands of starving kids are dying every day.
Yeah.
And so if we can turn on the lights and flush the toilet and we got food on the table, you should be more grateful than 95% of the population. It's just that we have a microscope on the 5%.
Yeah.
That's what's on the news. And nobody's talking about all these starving kids from COVID and all this stuff that's happened over there. And so it's all about perspective. It's like having dinner with Nick. What's Nick's last name? The guy without the limbs.
Oh, yes. Shoot.
I always have a hard time with his last name.
Yeah, it's darn it! If you didn't ask me, I could have just blurted it out. But he's a prolific speaker at this point, and he's pretty amazing.
Well, every time I have an injury and get Plum disease,
you think of him.
I think of him because the dude's got a half an arm with a finger, and I sat next to him at dinner one night, and this guy is crushing life.
Yep.
Using his little stubs to get on a treadmill. He's flipping tires in the gym. He's doing bodybuilding shows, and he's got no limbs. He was born this way, so he doesn't know any different.
Yep.
And it's just like, wow, I have Plum disease over a knee injury. Look at this guy. So again, being grateful also gives you perspective. And I think that that's really using the Nick analogy is always give yourself some perspective. Think about those starving kids when you're eating and how much you do have, and focus on what you do have and not necessarily what you don't.
No, it's a great message. I'm glad that we finished with that because ultimately we are so blessed. And, again, you and I together are unafraid to share our Christian faith, and as I both have on this podcast in the past, and that's our rock, our foundation, our source of strength, what we tap into, our power source, so to speak, and that's always my reminder of gratitude and blessings and all the things I'm so fortunate for. I find myself doing a lot more thanking God for all that He's given me rather than asking God for more.
God wants you to have more increase in your life.
Of course.
He just wants you to know it comes from Him.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
It's that simple. I mean, He wants you to be rich. And I'm not necessarily talking monetary riches, just like wealth in other areas. He wants that. He wants riches in your life. He just wants you to know it all comes from Him. And when you have gratitude and you have faith, I think it really becomes a reflection of actions, right? God made the birds and the worms, but He didn't go around dumping the worms in the nest for the birds.
No, that's right.
So got to take action. God can move the mountains, but you got to bring your shovel.
That's right. If you're the chick, you got to still crack your shell open.
Exactly.
Don't let somebody else do it for you.
Right. Schedule the resistance, baby.
That's it. I love it, man.
All right,
I love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
Thank you so much for all the value. I know this conversation is going to help people. It's going to be a wake-up call, a kick in the butt to get them to take some action and do something it's 75 days. You can do it. Shaun did it with a lot of other people who, a couple people there that said they were doing it. I'm like, I don't think they'll be able to. And they did it.
A couple finished that I was very impressed. I didn't think they'd finish. Yeah.
It's awesome. Cool. It's just a testament to, if you really, if you tell yourself you can. Or if you tell yourself you can't, you won't.
Every no makes you stronger.
Yep. Yeah, it's right. It does.
Every
it does.
Makes you stronger.
It's awesome. So thank you, listeners. Now's the time. Hit that 5 stars. We thank you for that. We would appreciate any comments. Were you moved in this conversation? Did it move the needle for you? Share your story in a comment. We would love to hear from you, and share this conversation with somebody else who needs to hear it, who can benefit. Maybe a friend or family member who needs that kick in the rear end. We would appreciate it for sure, because it just helps our show grow and become downloaded by more phones. More iPhones need our show. That's for sure. So we appreciate that. We will be back next week, as always, on Strong by Design with a new podcast that drops every Wednesday at 6 a.m. And occasionally we upload a bonus one on like a Saturday. But every week we're giving you new content that will make you stronger in body and mind and spirit. And we thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.